Let me take you on one of Dark Souls' most beautiful, insightful, and ultimately most tragic storylines. I'm not talking about the cruelty of the undead asylum, nor am I speaking about the tragedy of Gwyn's firstborn. I'm talking about the story of Sorcery. Sorcery is present in Dark Souls from the very beginning of the game. Our introduction to its first variation happens before the game even formally starts. Conceived at the same time as the first Lord Souls are found, the Witch of Izalith is able to use her soul to conjure fire sorcery. These gave her the ability to conjure firestorms, and even offered a good attempt at recreating Gwyn's first flame in the form of the Chaos Flame. Unfortunately, the Chaos Flame, although immensely powerful, lacked the elegance of the first flame and led to the corruption of an entire region, leading to the demise of the Witch of Izalith and her children. Fire sorcery was only ever taught to her children and henceforth ceased to exist after they had already passed. Traces of fire sorcery can be found today within the art of pyromancy, but pyromancy itself is not fire sorcery but the ability to manipulate the vestments of the chaos flame created by the Witch of Izalith. Pyromancy is a video for another day, however. Nevertheless, what we learned from the Witch of Izalith is that sorcery is wholly connected to the soul. After the fall of Izalith, there is another very ancient form of sorcery that would pop up in history. Ulasil was a region that existed during the earliest stage of the Age of Fire, preceding Gwyn's linking of the First Flame, a place full of life, vegetation and a rich cultural background. Within this culture, mystics would emerge that developed the Golden Sorceries. Echoing the nature of the times, Golden Sorcery was not combative in any way, and why would they be? The world at this point was at a place of peace. The Age of Fire was at its brightest. Ulasil's residents were farmers, guardians and mystics who were in complete harmony with their surroundings and chose to keep a low profile. And a low profile they did. As we know, the mystics of this land would develop completely utilitarian spells from invisibility to camouflage to casting light. The people of Ulasil were even able to develop a relationship with the mushroom people, beings that stayed passive even during the darkest times of the original timeline. However, irony in Dark Souls is often its cruelest trait, as despite Ulasil's affinity to harmony and light, a darkness dwelled under their land. But not just any darkness, the father of all darkness, the Abyss. With time, Ulasil became ground zero for the spread of the Abyss we later come to characterise as the source of the undead curse. Manus, the furtive pygmy and bearer of the Dark Soul, would be awoken by a familiar primordial serpent. Slowly, Manus wreaked havoc on Ulasil, corrupting its denizens, and even took the sanity of one of Gwyn's most fierce and beloved knights, Artorias. Though eventually this darkness would be halted by an unnamed hero, the town was changed forever, and the art of golden sorcery became whispers in history. It's not until many ages later that the Xanthus scholars took the mantle of giving ancient sorceries of Ulasil a second life, and were able to replicate some of its true potential. Through the persecution of his peers, Xanthus scholar Hazel persevered, and the art of golden sorcery persevered with him, though its impact became limited as its utility was mostly overlooked, as the world of Dark Souls at this time needed strength, not harmony. Ironically, the legacy of Ulasil's magic of light did not only persevere through Hazel, however. Under the city of Ulasil, many of the now corrupted mystics ventured deeper into the Abyss. Soon, it was not just their minds that were corrupted, but the nature of their mysticism too. In yet another cruel twist of fate, the peaceful magic of Ulasil would too become corrupted, turning a once harmonious civilization into one of unfounded strength. Corrupted by the influence of the furtive pygmy, the mystics learned to cast orbs of darkness, fogs of death, and pure sprites of humanity that pursued whomever came within its proximity. And as the Abyss further enveloped the world due to Gwyn's linking of the First Flame, the world began seeing a bipolarity between dark and light. With the help of primordial serpent Karth, many would know of Gwyn's deed and the true nature of humanity. Some became skeptical of Gwyn's intentions and learned of humanity's inherent darkness, choosing to indulge deeper into the art of dark sorcery, rejecting the light and embracing the Age of Dark. Namely was a man named Galir, credited with bringing the art of dark sorcery into the wider Souls universe. There are two prominent theories as to Galir's role in the creation and replication of dark sorcery. The first is that he was present during the collapse of Ulasil and learned, much like the mystics, of dark sorcery through its corruption, and later was able to share down the knowledge in the form of hexes. The other theory is that he was the creator of dark sorcery, being the first to be corrupted by Manus and sharing the knowledge of dark sorcery to the now corrupted mystics, and later those mystics would pass down that knowledge in the form of hexes. Regardless, Galir's influence would bring Ulasil's dark sorcery to the wider world, and we know specifically of its presence in Drangleic. Taking on a new name, dark sorceries were better understood as hexes in Drangleic. Hexes were incredibly similar to the original dark sorceries of Ulasil, which is a testament to Galir's influence and acumen. The stories of hexes in Drangleic also help us understand further the nuance of dark sorcery and its existence as an antithesis to the Age of Fire. For that story we have to follow Grendel, a man at the head of the Pilgrims of the Dark Covenant that sought to become closer to the Abyss. Much like Ulasil, Grendel did not begin with an affinity for the dark. Instead, he took an opposite stance. He was a high-ranking cleric. However, an accident would leave Grendel semi-paralysed and confined to a wheelchair. His disability would have him shunned and humiliated by his religious peers, and this would cause Grendel to begin rejecting the light and finding a deep peace in the darkness. This pursuit of peace had Grendel diving into dark chasms that housed the deepest recesses of the Abyss and created a covenant to share this affinity with his followers. Some of these followers, such as Felkin the Outcast, would utilise this new understanding of the dark to further develop their own hexes and increase the portfolio for dark sorcery by creating new spells such as Revenant Weapon. The concept of Grendel's deep peace would see a second coming in Lothric. The Church of the Deep was a sister covenant to the Way of the White, set up to look over the Abyss. Much like Ulasil though, and much like Grendel's initial duties as a cleric, it therefore may not come as a surprise that once again those in the ranks of this religious order would become corrupted by the Abyss's connection to their humanity, eventually reappropriating the entire church into an agent of the dark. One of the main players in this corruption was Saint Aldrich. Aldrich would become enamoured by the Abyss and develop the habit of cannibalism as an attempt to gaining more humanity, bringing him closer to the deep. Under the supervision of Saint Aldrich, the Church of the Deep would eventually take a new form and support Aldrich's mission to empower the Abyss and even consume the old gods as an attempt to subdue the Age of Fire. With the help of high-ranking members such as Pontiff Sullivan, various new sorceries would be developed from the Church of the Deep, such as Deep Soul and Soul Dregs, resembling the dark sorcery of Ulasil alongside Aldrich's bloat from his cannibalism. These deep sorceries resembled much of the aesthetics of dark sorcery, such as the spells having a similar appearance to the humanity sprites. The story of dark sorcery was not alone in its development through the ages, however. Adjacent to it was a story of soul sorcery. Soul sorcery would become one of the oldest forms of sorcery, and unlike dark sorcery, fire sorcery and golden sorcery, it came with a combination of lasting impact and lasting influence, something that would be present even at the end of the universe. Its story starts way before then though. We start at the beginning of the world. Seath the Scaleless was an albino archdragon that was given dukedom and a part of Gwyn's soul by Gwyn during the Age of Fire due to his betrayal of other archdragons during the fight against the Age of Ancients. Seath sought immortality and was granted a library to research this. As a byproduct, Seath developed crystal sorcery, manipulating crystals in an attempt to develop the scales of immortality that he lacked. At this point, the use of crystal sorcery was only known by Seath. Seath's research was diabolical and inhumane, but it didn't stop a school of scholars studying his research. Through this, the Vinheim Dragon School was erected. Though it's unclear as to what figures led this expedition, their research was able to develop soul sorcery and a means to cast this through a catalyst, finally discovering a means of which ordinary humans can utilize its potential. It's likely the Vinheim Dragon School came to this discovery of catalysts through the Witch of Izalith, as her daughters would famously use similar tools during the Age of Ancients. Regardless, their influence was so strong, the art of soul sorcery became a staple in the universe, and various faculties within Vinheim would specialise in a variety of disciplines such as magical blacksmithing, but most importantly, an arsenal of offensive capabilities. Many scholars would rise the ranks of Vinheim, but only one would become renowned by the entire continent. Big Hat Logan was an elusive and talented individual. Logan rose the ranks of Vinheim's Dragon School at record pace and even secured his place on their Royal Council of Sorcerers. Predictably, Logan would learn everything the college had to offer and sought to learn more. Eventually, he chose to leave Vinheim on a mission to discover the origins of sorcery to further his quest for knowledge. With the knowledge of the origins of soul sorcery, Logan arrived in Lordran, the land of the lords and the place where the Lord Souls were first discovered. Determined to have an audience with the father of sorcery, Seath, Logan set his eyes on the Grand Library. With some luck, determination, and unlikely camaraderie with a certain chosen undead, he would arrive in Seath's domain. Big Hat Logan would spend much of his time in the library obsessing over every document available to him, and would eventually use this knowledge of catalysts and soul sorceries to develop a form of crystal sorcery that could be used by mere humans. The toll of this research, much like it had Seath, would corrupt Logan's mind. His obsession turned success would become his downfall. Maddened by his discoveries, he would be brought down by the same chosen undead that would help him get there in the first place. His sacrifice would not go unnoticed though. As the old adage goes, you can kill a man, but his ideas will live on forever. Sure enough, his ideas would live on, as the knowledge of his discoveries were passed down to his peers and apprentices. Two of said apprentices were the unnamed Preacher Twins, later to be known as the Crystal Sages. In the annals of history, the Crystal Sages would first come to prominence during the events of the Unkindling. In a world shrouded by the uncertainty of Lothric's choice to abandon linking the First Flame, it built a perfect power vacuum for them to spread their influence. The twins eventually took claim to the Grand Archives in Lothric and created a school of scholars devoted to the furtherment of Big Hat Logan's research into crystal sorcery. Learning from the lessons of their tutors, the sages would learn to employ a policy of dousing their heads into candle wax to preemptively stave off the maddening nature of studying Seath the Scaleless, and it would be successful. The crystal sages were not only able to develop new crystal sorceries, but were able to do so with an unaltered mind. At some point, the Crystal Sages would become acquainted with King Osiris. Osiris would employ the duo in developing a perfect heir to correct his disabled son Lothric's unwillingness to link the First Flame. The research would eventually cause Osiris to go mad and, in a cruel twist of fate, turn himself into an abomination and a warped version of Seath. Both would return to the library after these events, but one of these twins would eventually separate from the archives to embark on another mission. One that found him within the ranks of the Undead Legion of Farron, a team assembled to fight the threat of the Abyss. This twin taught sorceries such as the art of imbuing blades with magic and magic projections of traditional weaponry such as swords to the Legion, and remained faithful to the very end. As even once the leaders of the pack, the Abyss Watchers, succumbed to the very abyss they sought to combat, the Crystal Sage stood there to protect them to the very end. And right at the end of the world, it would be dark and soul sorcery that would still be there with us at the Ring City, thus ending the known story of sorcery. Before we end the video, it's likely you're asking where frost sorcery is in this, and while it's true frost sorcery did exist in the universe, much of its history it's very hard to gauge. I couldn't find enough conclusive resources to add it to the overall timeline, and its exclusive existence in the painted world of Ariandel meant its presence did little to influence the world of Dark Souls outside of the alternate world of Ariandel. And that brings me nicely onto my last point. The truth is, these sorceries are only the ones we know of. Our role in the Souls universe is not a whole picture. Eons pass between each of the events we are able to experience, and it's likely various cultures would develop sorceries of their own, as sorcery was nothing more than a byproduct of our souls. Be it our dark soul inherent to all men, or the souls we assumed at the beginning of the Age of Fire. Where there are souls, there will be sorcery, and its existence is a testament to the diverse cultures within the universe. Thanks for making it to the end of the video. If you're still here, why don't you go ahead and drop a subscribe so that YouTube is nice to me and puts my videos in front of you every now and then. I'm a full-time student at the moment, and taking time to create these videos is a great escape and allows me to share this to as many people as I know will enjoy them. So yeah, sharing it means a heap to me, and I hope I will see you guys next week for the next video.